Good day and welcome to the Womxn Show. I'm Lenina Dasu. This week we celebrate Human Rights Day in commemoration of protests against apartheid and also the Sharpeville massacre in 1960, in which 250 people were killed and injured. But for this episode we're doing something a little bit different. We are celebrating the many women who have worked in caring professions that contribute to our human rights both historically and in the present day. Now in 2021, the local organization Tekano held a campaign called Rea Bua, Her Story, which looked at the erasure of women in caring professions from history, in that their stories were not recognized and their work was undervalued. Later in the show, we are going to be speaking to Lebogang Ramafoko from Tekano, who is going to be telling us more about this campaign. But before that, we are going to look at some videos that were commissioned and played during the campaign that celebrate women's contribution to human rights. Let's have a look.
Zulu yemfihlakalo Zulu yesimanga ezalise umhlabane.
In May 1977, you are informed that you have been banished. You will make your home in the Orange Free State, in a tiny town called Brantford. The house where you live in Brantford is not even a metaphorical island. It is not on a large plot of land or on a farm so remote that it may as well be in the middle of an ocean. Instead, the small three-roomed house sits alongside a row of others that look exactly the same.
The special branch, they brought it in Bradford. They came with a big truck and then they just dumped this woman. We knew nothing about that because there were no newspaper by then in Brantford, unless you give somebody to bring you a newspaper from Bloemfontein. But the whites, they even tip their people who are working for them, their mates. Don't come near to that woman. It's very dangerous. Do not speak to that woman. It's a politique.
Your tiny house is in a township that local residents call Patagahle. It is one of almost 1,000 houses, little grayish-yellow boxes, one exactly like the other, all of them too small to hold the dreams of those inside them. On the walls of many of them, there are likely to be framed pictures with captions that say, "Black is beautiful," and framed photographs of loved ones and certificates and albums stuffed with memories.
I used to pass through Winnie's place getting to school. So you find that even if you don't greet Winnie, Winnie would greet you. Sakbona Nkosikazi. She would stand in front of her house where she was dumped and say, "How do you leave people? Come here." And then you simply cannot run away when a person says, "Come here."
The restrictions of banishment mean you are not allowed to interact with people in groups. They are supposed to stay away, and only one person is allowed in the house with you at once. You never take it seriously.
The special branch, they were staying each and every night. Right up there is a hill, Bason Kop, right up there. They would stay there with their fruitkickers, looking at who is getting to Winnie's house and so on. No one should visit Winnie. She was not supposed to visit anyone. She was supposed to report at the police station at 6 o'clock every day, and she was not supposed to get to town. Hers was just restricted to be done in the house. Automatically, what they said you should not do, we would do it, as long as it is good for the blacks.
Well, I have lived most of my life alone. The best years of my life really having those spent under banning orders. Exile here means virtually really being in prison at your own expense. And it is the extreme isolation that is very, very difficult. And of course, worst of all was being without my children and not having the opportunity to play the role of a parent, like all parents in democratic societies. Virtually both of us have really not had that opportunity to be parents to our children.
You are a woman who has learned to live without hope, a woman who has steeled herself against believing in the possibility of kindness, yet who simply can't help herself, because hope is inherent in living. To give up on hope is to give up on possibility. And how can a freedom fighter lose hope?
That was some video footage recorded as part of the Tekano Rea Bua Her Story campaign. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and this week for Human Rights Day, we are doing a show celebrating women who have made an impact in our lives and also who have experienced erasure from history. And by erasure, I mean that nothing was really written about them. Now, before the break, we mentioned a campaign by Tekano called Rea Bua, Her Story, where they celebrated women who worked in the care industry and who basically were the soldiers that enforced our human rights. So we're talking about social workers, teachers, factory workers, and so forth. And joining me in the studio is Robyn Joy London, who is the Managing Director of Focus Facility Solutions. And we're chatting to Robyn because her story is so interesting. And her company is also a celebration of the work that her mother did, which is also often unrecognized. Robyn, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Renina.
So Robyn, I'm going to start by saying I came across you because you have this amazing tribute on your website that sparked this idea. And I'm just going to read it quickly so that everyone knows. So I ended up in this industry because it is very close to home. Having our mom raise 4 kids as a cleaner to put us through school, tertiary education, and give us the platform she did with the job she had made me want to create a difference in our industry. And so, I thought that was really beautiful. I have a similar story. My mother worked in a factory. She had also 3 young kids to raise. And it is our success story in terms of where we all are now. So I wanted to ask you a little bit, give us some history.
Okay, so, basically, my mother wasn't a cleaner really. She was a hygiene specialist. So prior to being a hygiene specialist, she had 3 different jobs. Where she was a rep for the company, she done bartending and she done waitressing. Basically to just put food on the table and stuff like that. Eventually, she worked for a cleaning company where she basically managed and ran the company for a boss, where she done cleaning duties and also done operational stuff, driving around, those type of things. And that is basically where she started.
And you said to me, because we chatted before the show, you said, as you were growing up, your mother held these 3 jobs to put food on the table, to put you guys through school, and you barely saw her, right?
Yes.
And how was that for you when you were growing up?
Wow, that was both positive and negative. Negative in a sense that she obviously wasn't there for me. When I reached milestones, when I got top achiever awards, when I played soccer, so I was like sportswoman of the year, and she wasn't there to support me or like be there. Hey, that's my baby girl. So to see other children's parents be there for them in that regard was a bit sad and disappointing. But at the same time, I knew why she was doing it. I knew what type of sacrifices she had to make because she did tell us. And then in a positive way, it had a big influence in my life because it made me independent from a very young age. Where I had to rely on myself and also where I knew I had to be my own biggest supporter. And I think the biggest lesson that was learned through my childhood, not her being there and whatever, was that I had to be a strong chick. And that is what I am now today.
No, exactly. And so we had to take on a lot, so daughters especially, I would say, have to take on a lot of the care work when our mothers are out working all the time.
Yes.
Which was a difference for me also. So your mom goes on to start her own cleaning business. And so how did that happen?
Okay, so basically she actually had an opportunity from one of her clients where she would obviously do cleaning work. And then I don't know whatever happened between her and her boss. And then her clients actually told her they're going to give her all the resources she needs because they believed in her so much. They're going to give her the resources that she needs because she didn't even finish standard 10. So she dropped out of school at a young age, etc. Didn't have no business knowledge. So they helped guide her to wages and basically started the company. So how it started was very emotional, and I never really speak about it, but you know the M5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So her very first cleaning contract she got was at Sef Marine by the docks. It was a night shift job. She took me, my brother and my sister. She would hike on the M5 with us at night because she never had a car. And we'd hike with her to Foreign Island to the docks.
Yeah.
We would help her work. So that time the bins, in offices you could smoke. So the bins would have cigarettes and you know, that type of thing. So she would let me and my brother do the dumping of the bins and wiping out the bins. My sister would do the vacuuming and she would do the attention to detail work. Now you must remember I was in grade 4, grade 5. I stand under correction. So we would help her work till maybe like 10 o'clock and we would either sleep under the desks after being vacuumed, the offices are vacuumed, or if the lift that we'd get to the docks, we'd sleep in the car until she's done at work. And then the next morning or whenever she's done, we'd go home, but go to school the next morning. So that is the journey that we went on. We went with her to all the different sites around Cape Town. Wow. When she'd work opposite Hout Bay, we'd go work with her on site and we go swim afterwards alone on the beach, me and my brother. So it was very humbling, and I think that is a big part of why I'm still where I am today in terms of the cleaning industry.
Wow, that is an amazing story, Robyn.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, so one of the questions I had here also was there's, when we think about cleaning, and so now I think we are talking about these jobs that people really undervalue, right? And jobs that are traditionally held by women and still today traditionally held by women. And I'm going to come back to the fact that your mom didn't have someone to look after you guys because that's the issue with care work, right? Yes. But I'm going to relate an experience I had. So when I was studying, and I worked at Pick and Pay, a friend of mine told me his work would rotate jobs as cleaners. And the money was lekker, right? So you would go there, which was a different person every week, so you'd only go, and I remember it was you go for 3 days and you get 750 Rand, and for me, that was a lot of money. So I took off and I decided to go and clean offices for these 3 days. And I tell people we didn't have a lot of money, but the way my mother spoiled us is that we didn't really do any chores. So I had, at this point, never even cleaned the toilet at home. Oh, wow. I mean, it's crazy because now I'm like, who did I think was doing it? But that's how she did it. You know, she's made us lazy, is what we always say. So I go there, and it's fine. It's great, you know. We go, we clean. I clean for the 3 days. But the experience that stands out for me is I walk into an office. And the guy working in the office is someone I recognize, right? So I know him from my area, and he completely ignores me. So, okay, so I go into the bin, I sweep the office, he's sitting there, and he completely ignores me. I saw him later on, after I graduated and so forth, and he did speak to me. But it brought home how different people in different sectors and different roles and different jobs are treated. And so what stood out again for me from this description is, and from your mom's story, is then working, doing the cleaning duties herself, and then later on starting the cleaning company and being a boss. And whether she's ever spoken about, or whether you have seen the difference in the way that she has been treated in those two different roles.
Okay, so basically I would say when it comes to clients and stuff, she would be treated differently. I think people in today's time, even with her, because of her relationship with the clients that she had, they respected her for what she done. Like even myself and my siblings, we work with our staff. If we short staff, we vacuum, we sweep, we dust, I sweep, make my chops. But we do whatever it needs to be done to get the job done. I mean, we'd see her working with the staff, that's how we learned. Yeah. Even our staff today, they still work for us from her time, they know us for 15 years. They taught us how to clean. I call her Auntie Sophie in front of my clients, and I can see her look at me weirdly, but I mean, that's the type of respect that she instilled in us from a young age, not to undermine or demean any other person or their role, what they're doing, because I mean, if you're working for honest living, I mean, there's a lot of value in that.
Of course. You say something else also on your site, which was really interesting for me. You say, where we as an organization ensure our staff's uniforms, their responsibilities, their job titles, their training, their wages, their circumstances are different, and that they are proud to be a cleaner and take pride in what they do because their job is just as important as anyone else's. And I'm assuming that also comes from being, there's a difference when you have a boss who has done that work,
Yes.
him or herself, and then and then employs other people to do it. There's a
True.
different understanding that someone, and I don't want to call anyone out, I don't want to say corporates are different to anyone else, but someone that comes into the role as a managing director and has never worked on the ground.
That's true.
And so what is the ethos that you have brought within that statement?
Look, we treat everyone, like I don't regard myself as a managing director. I'm a team member, I'm a leader. So that's where the difference comes in. And like I told you yesterday, we try to have everyone on the same page. We are all working for the greater good. We are trying to change the perception of cleaning, the cleaning industry. We're trying to change the perception of our people. View not just our staff alone by focus, but as cleaners in a general, as a whole. And like I mentioned too, we don't say cleaners, we say hygiene specialists, hygiene operators, because they're trained to do a certain job. As easy to say I'm the cleaner, but these people took time to learn how to do things differently. They're looking after your health. They're ensuring that our clients, they stop coming to work every day by not being dirty or making it germ-free. So we try to change that perception. I had to do sorry to go off topic, I had to do a presentation for a big corporate, and this is about 4 years ago. My selling point was we are hygiene specialists. We ensure that your workplace is clean. COVID came now 2 years ago, and now people realizing the importance of what we do. Now they understand, now they want to pay a bit more. Whereas before they weren't really interested, it's just picking up that. But we need PPE, we need certain things that we obviously put into place to make sure that you're getting a valuable service, it's not just cleaning. So I hope that clarifies.
No, it does. And you're making me think, even prior to COVID, like you're saying, they think it's just picking up trash, but a lot of what is being done at COVID is actually necessary stuff. I'm sure, even prior to COVID, right?
Yes.
And so I love that you are not just having this company, but you're sort of reframing.
Yes.
And so let's just talk about, as a female entrepreneur, one of the other things you also said is that it's a very male-dominated industry also.
Yes.
And so what is that like to sort of go in there and to navigate that space?
Oh, look, I think for me, because I come from working on construction sites. Okay. So myself and my siblings, we work on different sites, construction, wherever. And obviously the type of environments is different. So I was exposed to a lot of different environments. And I feel like I was just blessed enough to not have been in a situation where people was maybe, obviously you get guys that are chauvinists and stuff like that. Or maybe looking down at you because you're younger and you're female and still a youth. But I mean, I don't let that get to me because I know what I'm doing. I'm good at what I do. And I know what type of service I'm giving to my clients. I don't let that interfere with my train of thought or let it intimidate me in any way.
And is that also the foundation that your mother instilled as an entrepreneur herself?
Yes.
What would you say are the best lessons that you learned from her?
To be strong and to just not give up and always persevere. You know, there's a lot of times you want to give up. Like literally, there's a lot of pressure. People don't realize the pressure that you have on a daily basis. You got clients, you got suppliers, you got staff. You're dealing with like 40 staff at a time, all different issues. It's bills, it's all these other things. You want to grow the business. And a lot of the times I feel like, I'm not ready for this, I can't handle it. But when I look back to the times with my mommy, like, I know what she went through, I know what she sacrificed for us. And I can't let that go into vain. I need to obviously try and make her proud because I know she wants us to carry on that legacy. And, you know, when you build a relationship with the staff like we have, we're very compassionate. Like, I was talking to them in the middle of the night and tell us maybe they don't have whatever. They know they can phone us for that. You can't phone I'm just giving an example, and sorry to say it, a big corporate cleaning company, they can't phone their manager, they don't even have their numbers. Who are you going to speak to your manager? Your manager don't care. But I mean, they can talk to me, they can talk to my brothers, they can ask us, listen here, we need this, we need that. If the children are sick, we're very empathetic in that way. And she taught us to be compassionate and just carry through our values and be true to ourselves. Because at the end of the day, that's what carries us through, no matter what it is that we're going through. I know like we get taught that we must do things right, and then we see in society, all these people are just getting things right, but they're not following the rules. But we get taught do things the right way, but now why is it not happening to us? We must carry on, persevere, that doors are going to open, that breakthroughs are going to happen, and eventually, it's almost like what you get is what you give, with what you give is what you get, and that is exactly how it is.
It's like the law of karma, right?
Yes, there we go.
You also told me a really, really beautiful and inspiring story. So when you guys were younger and things were not going so well, you lived in a garage. Your mom and you and your siblings.
Yes, and my daddy. So basically, it was our grandmother's plot, right? So they lived in the main house, we lived in the garage, and I mean, that was the first garage we lived in, no toilet. But I mean, it's so humbling for me. It's like inspiring. Every time I go to my mommy's house, I see the garage that we grew up in. That's where she bought the plot. And then also, as Jasmine probably lived in a Wendy house in another person's yard and stuff, never had a toilet. But I mean, these are all things that I don't normally talk about because people don't really care about, you know, the upbringing of who you are. But that's in values that is instilled in us now. I mean, that humbling moments, because it does carry you through. Like whenever you go through things, you think things are bad, but it's like, but you had it worse back in the day and you overcame that. So
yeah. And so, just so you guys know, so what she's saying, she lived in the garage with the mom, and now your mom has a whole house on this plot. Your mom bought the plot, and now she lives in the whole house there. You know, I spoke to someone else when we were speaking about staying in the Wendy house, living in a backyard dwelling, and I spoke to somebody once who said she also, you know, when you talk about nobody cares about how we grew up, but we did, right? They do care about it. It is important. It's a part of who we are, right? And so, how was that experience for you also in terms of, because you were young, right? It sounds like you went through a lot of challenges. You were like going to go work at night with your mom in the docks. You guys were staying in places with no toilets, and also I want to ask, because for me, I often speak about the fact that my mom, we had a very strong family culture. So it's my mom and it was us kids, and we looked out for each other. And sometimes I say one of the reasons why we didn't sort of go off the beaten path, and there were lots of opportunities for that, is that she always pulled us back in. So I use an example. I was like, you know, one of my brothers was the naughty one, but she always, every single night, made us go out and look for him. And we were upset. We had to go knock on doors. But every night we all had to be inside and be home. And that provided, as much as we were upset at the time about it, you know, about these little things and about these rules and about how strict she was, that is what kept us grounded and kept us together and kept us like on that path. And so you have three siblings.
Yeah.
There were 4 kids. Was it a strong family unit?
yes, I can actually resonate a lot with you because exactly like you explaining how your mother was, my mother also brought that type of culture, strong culture. And like you're asking how did it make me feel? I felt embarrassed, obviously. I want to bring friends home because, you know, it's not so nice. Even though we shouldn't be afraid to say where we come from or be embarrassed about your living conditions. Everyone's circumstances is different. But it did make me feel like that, especially in primary school. Because now, you know, like you're the poorest in the class, you can't go, we service on a Friday, or you can't go on a school camp. It made a person feel very like low at the point, but it's, like I said, humbling because, I mean, today, it makes me appreciate so much things and it makes me be compassionate because I know exactly what other people are going through, and at least I can maybe give more or give where I can give.
And that's actually what I wanted to bring up, because, you know, the thing is, when I think now about those sort of feelings of embarrassment and angst and loneliness, you know, at the time you don't know where you're going to end up and where you're going to go. And the message, I think, is that, you know, this too shall pass, which I didn't even know in primary school, right? We don't have our quotes and our memes and our, just to strengthen us. But we don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to ask you, so we speak about these things, we speak about these experiences that we had and the strong women, our mothers, who brought us through that, you know, and I think in the show, one of the important things is that we want to recognize that and we want to honor that. But I also want to, from your perspective, just last words, speaking to women who find themselves now in that situation, because women still do the majority of the care work. That care work is still undervalued, undermined, and unrecognized. And many of them might still be taking their children to work because they don't have someone to look after them. What would you say is a message to them?
Don't give up, you know, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Have patience with yourself and believe your season is going to come. whatever you're doing for yourself and what you're doing for your kids is not going to be in vain. There's going to be a time where, you know, all that hard work, that perseverance, that sacrifice, it's gonna be worth something. And then in that moment, you're going to be like, wow, it's not impossible. It can happen. My mom is living proof it happened. I mean, like I told you, I have friends that are going through like hectic issues, and you know, I always think to myself, like, I'm like so optimistic about it. Like, don't worry, man, you're gonna get through it. Like, look at my mommy, like she got through it, you know. So it can happen. Just work hard and obviously have faith and believe in yourself. You can overcome anything you put your mind to it, and if you have faith and just pray about it. So that's all I can say.
And a message to mommy.
Thank you, mommy, for all your hard work and your sacrifices, and I hope I am making proud, just me, but me and the team, and that we're going to keep living in your legacy.
I think that is us for this segment. We are going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking to a representative from Tekano who is going to speak about the Rea Bua campaign. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and for this Human Rights Day, we are celebrating the contributions of women in the care industry. Now, we had a chance to speak to Lebogang Ramafoko from Tekano, who did a campaign last year in 2021 on highlighting the contributions of women in the care industry. Lebogang wasn't able to join us live, but we managed to squeeze in a conversation. Let's have a look. Lebogang, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Lebogang, for Women's Month 2021, Tekano held the Rea Bua critical dialogues on her story, race, gender, and the political economy of healthcare in South Africa. And one of the aims was to recognize critical milestones of women's contributions who had previously experienced erasure, which essentially means that their stories were forgotten or overlooked or suppressed throughout history. Can you tell us what the campaign was and what it sought to address in terms of this?
So I think firstly, we came up with the campaign because we recognized that the apartheid economy was built at the exclusion of Black women. And when their labor was needed, they were deliberately, for economic reasons, constrained to what we call care work, such as nursing, teaching, or social work. We will remember that we mark the 9th of August in South Africa as a day where women marched because their movement, like the movement of Black men, was being constrained in places of employment. So their work was really confined to these areas. We know that globally, this kind of care work where many women are concentrated is ignored. In a lot of ways, a number of women or many women or all women, in fact, do that work without compensation. But also when they do it as a profession, nursing, teaching, and social work are some of the professions that are really lowly paid. And we also, in documenting our stories, his story, not her story, really have erased a lot of women. We don't understand what their contributions to the labor movement was. We do not see how they basically organized to circumvent the apartheid agenda of keeping them right at the bottom of the political economy. And the aim as a decolonial Africanist feminist organization that addresses health equity in order to build an inclusive society was to recognize the contribution that these women made, but not only to recognize individual women, because I don't think that we can recognize all of them. We also recognize that although women have been erased, even when you recognize some women, you do that at the exclusion of others. But it was also to surface some of the conversations that I'm talking about right now, about how the political economy of healthcare in South Africa has impacted on women and how it continues to impact on women. So that was a campaign which was, it started on social media, where we were calling on women to remember those women that have been forgotten. It then went on to the production of 5 films, 2 of which basically recognized the contribution of Winnie Madikizela Mandela and how young feminists reclaimed her story and her narrative, which we later known how there was a machinery driven by the media to defile her, her name and her work, and what that has done in terms of what we do to women who, as I say, color outside of the line, but also speak of some of the challenges that women still experience. And then we ended with a celebration of song and the arts as a way of recognizing the role that even women in the arts still play, but are also left in the margins, even when you look at sports, of how we discriminate against even the pay and the rewards that people who excel in sport get as a result of their agenda.
Thank you, Lebogang. I mean, that was such a wonderful description, and there was so much in there. I just went to, I went to look at sort of 3 parts of it. One of my shows I had recently where we were speaking about women writing their stories. One woman in particular said that women were so active during the struggle, but when I opened the history books, it's as if we didn't exist. And so I love that through the campaign and through her story and telling the stories of women during the struggle and throughout history, I think that we are giving one recognition, and giving them a place, their rightful place in history. But then the other thing is also, for the next generations to learn from them and to be able to, I think what I'm hearing when we think about young activists and we think about what you spoke when you said the oppression of women not being seen is also an oppression. We need to learn that it is okay, that visibility is okay. Because a lot of the questions and the concerns that I have and I hear from women is about invisibility, where we speak about imposter syndrome and we speak about we don't belong and we speak about especially a fear of visibility. And I often believe it's because we haven't seen the examples of women who have come before us in terms of what can be achieved when we step out. And so I love that the campaign incorporated arts, dialogues and conversation and storytelling through poetry and short films. I want to bring up a quote I read by Audre Lorde recently that said, "I'm writing this now so that I or anyone else in need or desire can dip into it at will if necessary to find the ingredients with which to build a wider construct." And so I love that because it spoke about giving us a wider construct outside of the frame or roles that society has dictated women should be in. Right? The very small frames that we should fit into. And so I wanted to ask you about the importance of storytelling and whether you can tell us what role you are hoping art and poetry and films can play, not just for the campaign, but as an ongoing resource.
So I like that you ask that question because a lot of us, and I'll use myself as an example, right? We go through multiple traumas, and some of our traumas are informed by the fact that we do not have the words or have seen the words that can help us define and explain what is going to us. And I think Bell Hooks also speaks about theory as healing and how she went to theory to heal parts of her past, parts of her childhood that did not make sense when, they happened. She speaks about how she went to theory to understand why her father, who would basically not give her any attention, was also given the responsibility to discipline her. And I think for her, when she then understood patriarchy, she understood why the society was handled that way. So without theorizing what story does and what we listen, when we listen to other stories, it has one, including poetry, the healing effect of helping us put words to what for many oppressed people, especially women in this regard, can be very, very painful emotions that many women, particularly Black black women suffer from. So the idea that even when you are in a position of power, which is what we are seeing right now, or let me not even talk about power, but positions of authority, you will feel so alone. And rather than understand, because that's what story and theory do, is to help you understand the environment, you start taking it on yourself. I don't know how many women I know who have gotten into these positions of power who talk about the sleepless nights, the fear that they have, that they have before meetings, because they have taken on the violence of the environment as their own failures. So what story does, when you've got artists, when you've got poets, when you've got filmmakers, when you've got people who write their own biographies, when you've got fictional writers, all of those are really, for me, doing what I call care and healing work. They are giving meaning, whether they are writing a children's book, whether it's Pumla Gola, who's writing about the female fear factory, whether it is about, Bell Hooks, who has left us just such a huge a body of knowledge. Everybody that contributes, whether it is Tandiswa Mazwai, who's asking us, Nizilibele kuba nizalwa ngobani, all of those artworks we respond to and speak to the different parts of us, whether it is through dance, it is through poetry. So it is not only, as unfortunately in this country, we are also performing another form of violence. We've relegated them to the arts, and we've lumped them as the arts. It's just, one body of work that is an extra. What this kind of documenting and telling stories does, it not only leaves a legacy for other women who are battling with these feelings. I mean, you basically just quoted from another, writer. It helps us make sense of a world that, if you don't make sense of it, can really harm you, where in fact the harm, and I think any form of oppression works that way. Oppression works when the harm is not inflicted outside. It's done by an invisible hand. And so the harm we give ourselves when we don't have story, when we don't have theory, when we don't have autobiographies, when we don't have the arts, is circumvented when you introduce story and the arts and theory, because it then can, even if it helps you and I breathe and say, I now understand how heteropatriarchy works, and I understand why I am feeling so inadequate, even when I'm the first person to wake up and go to work, and I'm the last person to sleep, and I'm the brightest person in the room, but I'm afraid to say my opinion because one, the environment is not enabling, but also the fear that I already come up with the self-stigmatization that I have experienced when I don't understand how the system operates.
Wow, Lebogang, I mean, I am so in love with that answer and just everything. I mean, I feel like I've gotten some ingredients now that formed a wider construct for my own sort of meaning making. And I feel, I read and watch a lot, so I feel almost affirmed in that because, I had a show the other day where we were speaking about just women taking time, and especially Black women taking time out to try and understand and make meaning and go internally to try and heal, and how that is often just not done. It goes against sort of the strong Black woman narrative where we just got to be chugging and going. So I love that you said that, and I love that you said that it's also part of sort of healing. And I think what I have personally found, if I may say, just from reading other things, is that women have a tendency to also blame ourselves until we understand the wider construct. Like before we understand what patriarchy is and that actually there is a patriarchy, we continue to think that we are doing something wrong, which is constantly. And I remember my moment when I thought in a situation I was going, oh my word, it's not me, it's the system. And then starting to look at that system and how that just opened up a whole different world where I was not wrong all the time, which is something that women struggle with. I wanted to ask, so one of the things that I come across now, I'm having the show, I'm having women on, lots of powerful women on, you know, and there is a need, I think, not just in South Africa, but globally for women, and especially for Black women, to come forward and start telling our stories for the reasons that you mentioned in your previous answer. But there seems to be, I mean, at its baseline, we sometimes call it imposter syndrome, but the lady that was on the show earlier, I mean, her comment struck me before she went into her history. She said, I'm sure no one's interested in how I grew up. And I said to her, we are interested in how you grew up, and how you grew up, you know, living in a garage with your mother, who's a cleaner, but still raised you 4 kids to go on and to have this amazing company is important. I want to ask you, and also, you know, as you speak to the women out there about the importance of telling our stories.
Yes. So, I mean, I think, oh my goodness, I mean, I think one of the biggest issues that we need to recognize is this. Firstly, patriarchy as a system, not only does it oppress women, but like apartheid and racial discrimination, it asks those that have been oppressed to oppress others. So the enforcers that culturally, and I put it in inverted commas, historically, the expectation is that women are the ones that must discipline, are the ones that must put women into line. We say children, but you see at teenagehood, our emphasis is not even on the boy child. The emphasis is on the girl child. And one of the things that other women then do, or the system makes other women do, is to then tell us on a daily basis, that we can't be seen. You will know that the narrative around rape and sexual abuse, the first question that comes is, what were you wearing? When you are loud, which is something that I grew up with because I am very loud, I wasn't told you will be on Cape TV and you will shape opinions and you will be on these stages. It was like, you talk too much for a girl. So we grow up almost from birth knowing that it is dangerous to call attention to yourself. It is dangerous to call attention to even your thinking. When you grow up and you have an opinion, it would be like, you know, with that big mouth, no man is going to marry you. And so, you know, we are socialized so much into saying, firstly, you are not important. That's the biggest narrative that comes out. But your story is not important, and your story does not matter. But it is the same thing that then sustains those forms of oppression. Because when we don't share, when we don't come together and we share our stories, and I see myself in your story, and I ask myself, why am I suffering the same kind of pain and unfairness that the woman who wrote about it 40 years ago is still also suffered? If you make women feel that their stories, or in the case of racism, Black people, that their stories are not important, you then create a dominant narrative where the oppressed want to aspire. And by aspiring, they don't even fight with you anymore. They want to be like you. You know how we mainly get into workplaces, and the rules that govern the boardroom, the rules that govern workplaces were made without us at the table. We have seen how in schools, children were beginning to question school uniform. It has happened before. And I found that funny, because while schooling is a place where children must, and those who go to university as well, must grapple with these concepts and come up with these concepts, the opposite is happening. We are taking what happened in the 40s, in the 50s, and we are imposing it on a different world order, where we are still grappling with hair, we are still grappling with uniform. And I guess for me, it shows what happens when you remove story, and what happens when you bring up people that basically makes them feel like their lives and their stories don't matter.
Wow, Lebogang, that is so very inspiring, and I think that a lot of the women are going to take that and take it forward. I mean, I can say, for me, even just the other day reading something which was speaking about Rosa Parks, and just how inspiring that was to be able to see. And I think for me, all the time is also just to be able to see what's possible. That,
Absolutely.
I mean, I love the quote, you can't be what you can't see. And we know that we are seeing a lot of firsts now, but there are some people who will jump and do a first. And there are the majority of the rest who need to know that, especially I think it's safe to be able to go and do that. And I know for me, when I read, and I want to encourage everybody out there, even when my mother hasn't written a book, but when I listen to her stories, and I will say, I'm a divorced woman, and some people still think that's very odd. I go on and I say, I'm a proudly divorced woman, and actually it wasn't an issue for me because I was raised in a house of divorced women, and so I was very confused by the fact that some people were really upset about it and thought that it might be the end of the world. It was not. I have seen women go on, get divorced, go work, raise kids, and to have that narrative available was powerful and gave me what you said. It gave me freedom to be able to do what needed to be done for the better life. Lebogang, we are out of time, and I'm so sad. I hope that we can have you back on again, but I want to say thank you so very much for coming on and for the insights that you have given us today.
Thank you so much, and very well done, and good luck with your show.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
That was a wonderful and inspiring conversation with CEO of Tekano, Lebogang Ramafoko. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. We're almost at the end of our show, but before we go, we are going to have a look at some more footage from the Rea Bua Her Story campaign celebrating women's contribution in the care industry. Let's have a look.
So we used to have our meetings in church because we were now told we are no more supposed to get together. When he said, "No, Mafa, what are the women doing here?" Then I told him. Then he said, "No, I think you must open a creche." Sure. In a township, small township like this, no one has been trained to run a creche here. Said, no, I'll make a plan. She was very active when. Don't think it's going to take a week or what. 1, 2, 3, what? When he said, no, just choose any women. I am going to send them in Soweto to go and observe how creche is being practiced. So as to come and do, you must do something, Mafa. You must do something. That church, they were having a hall, and that hall was having a kitchen with a stove and full equipment. So those women, they allowed us to practice the soup kitchen there. The house that was what burnt down, Winnie was practicing the clinic there. The medicines were from Chopek, from Dr. Motlane. So then it was bombed. She intended to build a garage and a storeroom to store the mealie. So they bombed that. It was in the night. A special branch.
That is why even exile is so worthwhile, because I'm absolutely certain that we shall attain our liberation. And even being in exile really is a constant reminder of the sickness of our society, and that we are virtually in prison, even in our country. Those who are outside prison walls are simply in a bigger prison, because a black man is virtually a prisoner, and all those other fellow whites and other groups that are as oppressed as we are. We are all really in prison, in a bigger apartheid prison.
In fact, she is a social worker by profession. And she practiced her social worker, her profession in Brantford freely because the people of Brantford would use Winnie. They used to call Winnie Mamani. If we are ill, even during the night, they would get to Mamani's place. Mamani. Mamani said, just get a driver. You take this woman or take this person to the doctor, free of charge. Each and everyone, if you are hungry, Winnie would give you food. You're getting cold, Winnie would bring you a blanket, would solve your problem you are having for. So the people were so fond of Winnie.
How can you fight so hard for justice, an act that requires nothing but hope, while protecting your heart from the vagaries of hope? You understand intimately the pain at the center of this paradox. Hope will save your people, but if you have too much of it, hope will kill your soul.
This is the first graduation of Tusano Daycare Center. That is the name of Winnie Mandela's crèche. The first one she established in Brantford, this one. This was a letter Winnie wrote in 1979, November, just wishing my family the best wishes because of giving her that shoulder to lean against during those times, the bad times. Then she was just encouraging me, saying that I was the first one to come nearer to her.
Amen.
And that brings us to the end of the show. I want to say to all the women out there who are working hard and trying to make things work, we salute you. I'm Lenina Rasool. Goodbye.